think my bottle looks good. I'm going to put it down.
Hi, I'm Dawn Harris, and I'm president of Revelation Gardens. I also founded Revelation Gardens, and we're a Benton County nonprofit that strives to reduce the number of pets in need in our county. We've started a weekly podcast every Sunday at 2 p.m., and we talk about all things related to pets. As you can see in the background, we have a kitty that's up there. Whoops, he disappeared. Today's topic is books with pets as an important... Actually, I'm going to start over. Today's topic is books with pets as important characters in stress relief.
That might make sense. Makes that better. You just want to do books with pets?
Yep.
No.
All right, so start here. Welcome. My name is Dawn Harris, and I'm founder and president of Revelation Gardens. Revelation Gardens is a Benton County nonprofit that works to reduce the number of pets in need in our community. We started a weekly podcast on Sundays at 2 p.m. to talk about all things related to about pets. Okay, I can see this isn't going to go real well. Take two. I won't do this again. Take two. All right. Hi, my name is Dawn Harris, and I'm founder and president of Revelation Gardens. Revelation Gardens is a Benton County nonprofit that's working to reduce the number of animals in need in our community. We've started a weekly podcast on Sundays at 2 p.m. to talk about all things related to pets. Today's topic is books with pets. Before we jump in, I'd like to remind you of our founding scripture, Revelation 21:4. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Today our guest speaker is Angie Tucker. Angie is a board member, and she's a Camden Junior High librarian. Angie has taught for Benton County Schools since 1992. She's performed numerous plays for animal rescues and likes to write. She has 4 dogs, 2 cats, and 1 bird. Hi, Angie.
Hey.
So let's go ahead and jump in and talk about books with pets. Why is reading a great stress reliever?
So one of the things that, reasons I was thinking of this, besides that I love books, is that we're always talking about Revelation Gardens' goal is can include stress relief for pets and for people. And so my big stress reliever is reading. And as a educator, of course, I love to encourage people to read. Since I love pets so much, I like reading books with pets in them. And so one of my favorite stress relievers, so during COVID, you would find me sitting on my couch with my legs out and my 4 dogs around me, a cat back here behind my head, and it was like heaven. And for me, that was a great stress reliever because it was very uncertain during COVID. You know, as an educator, you know, our whole world was just flipped upside down, and everybody else's too. But we, you know, it's almost been exactly a year that we didn't come back to school. And so to get out of this world, you know, even if I was going into a world that was horrible too, at least it was a pretend world, and I knew there was going to be some resolution at the end. And so it was such a wonderful way to get out of this world. Not to mention, it's a good thing to do with your pets, because you can't, you know, they like to sit with you while you're reading, and so it gives you bonding time with them too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. They definitely like to get on our laps and cuddle, and
pugs especially.
Perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
So do you have any tips about finding books about animals?
So one of the things that I have found, it's so interesting as you age that you discover you really do gain wisdom. You know, you have a lot more information. Like when I started teaching and I was 20, I didn't have near as much information about what are some good books to read. It was just books I'd read. Now that I've read so much, and then the internet has opened up so many ways to research, where can I find books that have pets in them? So Goodreads is an awesome website that you can type in anything under Goodreads any subject, and there's a board that says here are some good books, and everybody posts books about animals or about pets. And so I found places that were more nonfiction, and about how to take care of pets and things like that. But I also found the fiction, which is what I'm most interested in, uh, where they're part of the lives of the characters.
So is it goodreads.com?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
And it's connected to like your Facebook and your Amazon account, and so like my friends that are connected that way, I can see what they're reading. It'll signal what they're reading, and you can comment to them about what you're reading or what they're reading. It's neat.
It's a way to stay connected with friends and family too.
Yeah, yeah. And there's another, there's lots of places, clubs kind of on Facebook, and I'm a member of the Silent Book Club, and that has been amazing. You can go in and say, I'm looking for a book that has a dog as a main character, and just thousands of people post, oh, read this one, or read this one, or read this one. And so I'm going to go on and look for some more cat books, because we're going to talk about that, because most of my books today are dogs. And so we're going to
So
see.
it's a book club on Facebook, or?
Uh-huh. So it's a group, and so you would look under Silent Book Club, and you sign up to be a member of that group. And there's more, I'm sure, but that's one I'm a part of that has been very good at giving me book suggestions, and I've just gotten lots and lots of books
Sounds
from there.
great.
Yeah, it's neat.
What is the difference between a book that has an animal in it and one that has an animal as a main character?
So that's one thing that I was thinking about as I got ready to talk, and I thought, sometimes you'll read a book and there's a cat. The person has a cat, but they hardly ever talk to it or notice it or anything like that. Whereas some books, even they're such an integral part to the story. If that animal was not there, the story would not be the same.
Right.
And so I love those books that interweave that animal into the story so that it's important, because animals are important in my life. And so, we like to see ourselves reflected in our books a lot of times. And that's what I see there. And I can relate to that, and I can understand that. And it makes me go, okay. So, like one of the last books that I read that had a dog in it, it had a cat too. I'm going to tell you about it. But it had a dog in it, but it was a end times kind of book, like the world had been infected with a big disease and these mutant bugs that killed people, and then the disease killed you if the bugs didn't get you. And so, but she had a dog, and she had a dog who went with her everywhere, and she had a dog that supported her, and she would sleep, when she was traveling, she would sleep and had the dog right there, and talked about the comfort that he gave. And I was like, so if there was an end times and I was there, this might be some way that I would act, as opposed to just always alone, and that kind of stuff. And so even in those situations, it's interesting to see how would my animal fit into my life in a circumstances like that.
Yeah.
I think that's why I read, for all the experiences I can have that I don't really have to have. I don't really want to go through the end times, but to get to experience it and learn wisdom from it is why I read. So,
A big takeaway with what you just said is just the comfort that pets can provide. And even in a fiction or even a nonfiction book, pulling that apart and really getting that and applying it to yourself, I think is really important. Because animals they're just so important to us, and providing comfort and protection. And, they're actually, because I'm hearing impaired, my dog can actually be an alert system for me, because I hear the bark. I hear the bark more than I hear the alarm.
wow,
So,
yeah, yeah.
it's an important thing. So, yeah, I can see where a book that has a main character like that could really be um, something that we are drawn to.
Yeah.
The first book you want to talk about is Illian the Octopus by Steve Rowley. Why is this your first choice?
So I thought this was a great book to talk about because it is a book about a man who has a dachshund, and the dachshund gets cancer, and the cancer is a tumor on his head. And so our whole reason for Revelation Gardens is about handling that death and grief. And so this whole book was about this man's grief, about this dog he loved so much, and coming to terms with the death of that dog. This is not a dog book that you would find this is a fiction, book about real things that we go through. And this book is interesting. So there's a couple of things to know about this book if this is a book you choose to read. First of all, it's not just sad, it's kind of funny. It's got a lot of humor in it. The octopus in the title is he turns that tumor into an octopus that's, living on his dog and causing his dog to be different. So he has conversations with the octopus on Lily's head all the time, and telling him to leave and why don't he get out of here and stuff like that, and getting angry at the octopus. And so that it's kind of funny too. He deals with like one vet not really understanding him and his needs and going to a new vet, which a lot of us with pets have experienced, where we've had, your veterinarian and your personal doctor, you have to have a connection with them because those are serious moments in your life, sickness and illness and uh, death, and you want a vet who understands you and how you're dealing with it and can help you better. And so I really like that. Yeah. So that was a book that I thought might be our first choice for our book club because it goes so well with our ideas and themes for Revelation Gardens.
So you have an idea for a book club, and we're going to talk
Mhm.
about that in a little bit. But I
Mhm.
think it's a fantastic idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that would be the first one
Yeah.
that folks could
Mhm.
read.
Yeah, and it's right here. I've already read it, but I bought another copy so that I could have it so I can mark in it and stuff because I had it on my Kindle. So this is what it looks like, Lily and Octopus.
Very good. So the next book is Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward. Why is this book so important?
So I wanted to talk about this book because it is a National Book Award winner. It is also the book that she won a MacArthur Fellowship. Do you know what a MacArthur
I
Fellowship
don't.
is?
Mm-mm.
So a MacArthur Fellowship, there were these rich people named the MacArthurs who loved the arts. And so when they died, they set up a foundation, and it gives grants to people, artistic people, so that for at least a year they're paying all their expenses so they can focus on that art, because so many artists sometimes they can't start for having to have a job that pays for them to
Sure.
be artists. And so this kind of gives them that year where they don't have to be worrying about finances and can go ahead and produce their artwork. And also it's focused on sustainable things. Like one of the MacArthur Fellows is like a environmental architect who creates ways to make cityscapes more environmental friendly. So that was fascinating. Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton, was also a MacArthur Fellow to write Hamilton.
Well,
And
that's fun.
so,
I didn't know about that.
yeah, and Jesmyn is amazing. I want to tell you about why this book was so interesting to me as a pet lover. It's a book about dog fighting.
Oh, that's a heavy subject.
It is heavy. The whole book is heavy. Don't read it. It's got if you have trigger things because it's hard to read. But it opens your eyes to something, and that's what I think literature is for. It's set during right before Hurricane Katrina, and it's a low-income family that lives in the Mississippi Gulf, and that summer before Katrina hits. And so the older brother is a father with three, two, three, four children who um, live in kind of this very low-income housing type area in the Gulf, and the brother does dogfighting, and he absolutely loves that dog. And it was fascinating to me because I don't believe in dogfighting. I do not believe in dogfighting. But seeing that, how much that dog was a reflection of his manhood. Do you know what I'm saying?
Hmm,
And
interesting.
it was fascinating. And it's And so we read it in my dual enrollment class with University of Tennessee at Martin to study it. And so we talked a lot about it. And so to me, that was a fascinating book because it gave me a different view of people who do that. I don't agree with them. I still don't agree with them. I would have been trying to talk him out of it and talk to him about, you love this dog so much, why are you doing this? But seeing, that's what makes us less judgmental, don't you think? About, we can look at people that we would normally just judge. If I saw those kids just at a dog fight, I would go, how horrible. But knew his life story, and I knew who he loved, and I knew who he
Put it
cared
in
about.
context,
Uh-huh.
and yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
It was an interesting read. And so I wanted to talk about that because sometimes they're not just lovey-dovey pet stories. They
Right.
can really open your eyes about, and it helped me understand what dogfight, why they even do it. Why do they even do it? I don't agree with why they do it, but I know why they do it. Because I couldn't understand why you would do it. And love the dogs. They love them. They love them. The ones that are the winners. They've got the ones that aren't. You know what I'm saying? And that's sad. But they loved them. And so anyway, that I just wanted to mention that one. So let's go to one that's these first three are very sad.
Are they all?
No, I'm gonna get to some fantasy ones that aren't as sad and talk a little bit. And the nonfiction are not sad; they're good.
The next book on the list is the story of Edgar Sagel by David Roblowski.
Yeah,
I think that's how you pronounce that.
it was an Oprah Winfrey Book Club choice. Do you remember when Oprah had book picks? And it's really thick, and I love really thick because I'm a reader and I want to get in that world. I really want to be there. It is based on Hamlet, but what it is it's the story of this boy who can hear but doesn't speak. And his family raises dogs that are a made up breed that they call the name of the family is a made up breed for the story. And the dog, when he's born, there's a dog who connects with him that becomes his communicator. And I loved her, Amandine. Her name is Amandine. And so some of the chapters are from her viewpoint, but it's totally a dog. It's not a mystical, magical thing, where the dog is talking and goes, that's my boy. It's more like what a dog's instincts would be saying to it about protecting this boy and helping this boy. And so she's Ophelia in the Hamlet. So Ophelia has a sad ending. So the dog does too. So that's why it's sad. But I loved that book because of Almondine, and that's maybe one of the first books where I was like, I love when they make an animal the main, a significant part of the plot. And she was, and so I've named lots and lots of my characters on games and stuff Almondine. I was thinking about naming my new bearded dragon Almondine once I was thinking about that. I said,
Oh.
oh, that would be a pretty name for her. So anyway, yes, that's a wonderful book. Very thick though, and it's good because if you like Shakespeare, you'll see the father dies and the brother of the father might be the cause of that, and he comes in. So I don't know if you know Hamlet, but that's the story of Hamlet. And it's also, I read a review that said it was sort of like the Jungle Book too, because when the boy runs away and he ends up living in the woods with the pack of dogs, with Amandine and a couple others that go with him and sort of protect him. So it's good.
Interesting.
It's
Yeah.
good book.
Huh.
It's one of my favorites. It's on my list of top 10.
So all of these books are more realistic depictions of dogs. Are there any more fantasy books that you've read?
So I wanted to include, there are some books that I've read that the animals talk or there's more magic to it, and I love those too because as a writer, I'm looking for that magic world that I can create where animals are as much a part of it as any other. And so a couple that I've read have already done that. There's one called the Assassin's Apprentice series by Robin Hobb, and there's a character who has beast magic, and beast magic is illegal. And what beast magic is there's an animal that he has a connection to, and they kind of live symbiotic relationship. And his is a wolf. One of the other people that I remember really strongly was somebody who his was a hawk. And so that was, I loved that because the animal was apart. And they were still very animal like. They didn't talk. You know, they were still animal like, but they had that strong connection with their owner. And the other one is the Golden Compass. And that is a very famous fantasy story, and they have a HBO show now of the Golden Compass. And your soul manifests itself outside your body as an animal, and so when you hit puberty, it becomes whatever animal most reflects your character, and I love
That's
that.
actually, I don't know the book. I think I've seen a film that is called The Golden Compass, but um, that actually it models, from the sounds of it, like the Mayan culture.
Oh, is that
They
right?
have, yeah, they have something very similar. That I can't remember the actual term, but there's an, a spirit that you're
Animal
connected with
spirit.
that's an animal,
Yeah.
and I think it starts with an N. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but yeah, so that's interesting that it kind of models that
Yes.
real life.
Yes.
Uh,
And lots of fantasy does that. Lots of
yeah.
fantasy takes from religious mythologies and creates its own world. And I love I love the Golden Compass. Um, so those are some fantasy ones. So I always love it when there's animals in fantasies, and
Mhm.
there are often a lot of animals in fantasy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And my brain is going trying to remember all the books I've read
Yeah,
that are animals involved, and
yeah,
um, I love to read as well, and I think this whole thing about being a stress reliever is right on. We'll talk about a little bit more about that at the end, but yeah.
yeah.
So what about cats? So far you've talked about dogs.
So I kept thinking, where are my cats in my books? And I cannot remember as strong. Of course, I'm a dog person, and so I can't remember as strongly cat stories. And the most recent one where there was a cat, and I went, oh yes, that's a cat, was a that end of the world story about the bees and the the virus killed everybody, and then the bees went crazy and they killed everybody. So if you didn't die from the virus, you died from the bees. And she had the dog that she was traveling with. Well, at one point, she it's a kind of a flash forward, and she's an older woman, and she comes back to this cabin they had stopped at that had a cat, and so she befriends that cat. And that cat is so like a cat compared to the dog she's been living with for years, because she said that she would start working on something, and when she would start working on it, the cat would come up and be like, look at me now, and she
Yes.
said, like, when she was just sitting and relaxing, he was nowhere to be found, but always when he was doing something, he would come up. And I said, oh, that is such a cat. And it feels like there's going to be a sequel, so I wonder if the cat will play more into that. I believe in that Assassin's Apprentice story that there was a woman who had a cat as her beast magic person. And so I just connected more with the people with dogs. And I know that there's a mystery series called The Cat and the Missing Spoon or whatever that, and it's a whole series. Lily Brown, I think, and I have them in my library. And I think the cat, there's a detective that has a cat, and the cat often helps her maybe, knock stuff over, and that they've knocked something over, and it's a clue, and it's like, oh, I found
Oh,
that. Yeah.
that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah. But that I'm going to start looking because
Well, I
I've
have the book at
realized.
home. It's like this thick. It's
Uh-huh.
called The Complete Cat,
Uh-huh.
and it's by, of course, I won't remember the author's name now. Uh, Campbell, I think. In any event, I might bring it and
Yeah.
share it another time. But yeah, it's very thick. I think it's three stories, and I have not started it yet. I think I read a couple of pages. It's hard for me to sit down and read. I used to be a big reader. I do some audiobooks now, but yeah, it looks like it's going to be wonderful. I had great reviews, and I love reading books about cats and
Right.
dogs, but this
Right.
one, it looked like it was really good. But
Well,
it's called
I'm
The
going to
Complete Cat.
go to my Facebook page because as I was preparing, I thought, I don't have any cat stories. And I'm going to ask them, what are some good books with cats and tell them what we did. And I'll bet I'll get a lot of good
Yeah, that's a good idea.
suggestions. Yeah.
We can maybe post a list next to our podcast,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people can refer back to that.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you only read fiction? Are
I,
there any nonfiction books that you'd like to
I do
recommend?
want to share some nonfiction because, like I said, my nonfiction is happier than my fiction. I found I like dark books. I don't know why. I'm not much of a comedy
You say
reader.
dark?
Dark. They're usually dark. They end badly. Um, so the first one I want to tell you about is called Clara: The Early Years, and it's about a pug, and it is amazing. It's
Of course,
so
it's a pug,
sweet.
right?
Yes. And what I loved about the book is it's not just about her. It's so neat how the writer integrated her story into the woman's story. So she gets a pug. She's always wanted a pug, and she gets it. And it's a very demanding little pug, and it's tiny, and like she carries it shopping. And there's all these funny stories about Clara. But then her and her husband decide they want children, and they haven't been able to have any. So she decides to adopt a child from China. And this is true. And so as she goes through the process of her adoption of this child, and what ends up happening is they can't get someone from China, and they get one from Eastern Europe, and they wanted a girl, and they get a boy. And it's just fascinating her path, and then how Clara behaves to all the things, because Clara sees them getting ready to, when they go to take a trip, and she doesn't want them to leave, and that kind of stuff. And it's just a lovely, lovely story where if you own a dog, and especially a pug, you can totally relate to Clara's personality and how she fits into this lady's life, and how much that's a part of your life. When you decide to have children and you have pets, it's part of the process. It's part of that process. So how are we going to connect this baby and these pets and make that transition for both of them?
Mm-hmm.
Not, well, we have to get rid of the dog because we're having a baby. No, that's your baby too.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When you were talking, even though we're talking about nonfiction, it reminded me of the movie A Dog's Purpose.
Oh
Did you
yes.
see that?
I No, I have been afraid to watch it. I'm afraid it's going to make me cry.
It's actually really good.
Is it
It's
okay?
really good. I actually boycotted it at first because there was a scene where they
Yeah.
mistreated the.
Yes, I saw that.
Okay,
Mhm.
so I boycotted it, and then I ended up watching it. I don't know, it just happened to be on, and it was really good.
And
I
I've
enjoyed it.
read that they did not harm that dog. I read every article that I saw, and I saw a really good article that explained what was happening and showed the video that, how people can take a video and then show people and make them think that that's not, that, what was happening wasn't what was happening.
Yeah, it's
So,
all about how it's framed,
yes,
and
yes.
you can pull things
Hmm.
out and misrepresent.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you don't have to feel guilty about it because they did okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was a good movie. It was cute, and it talked.
And that's a book I haven't read. It's a book first, and I like to read the
That's
book
true. Yeah,
first.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
I
So I
think
need to read that
it'd
book.
be worth reading.
A lot of times I haven't read the most popular books that are about dogs because I'm looking for that gem that nobody's ever heard of.
Sure.
Yeah. So I didn't read Marley and Me for a long time, but I have read it now. So I've read that one, but I haven't read
I
Dog's
actually haven't
Purpose.
read that one.
Yeah,
No.
it's good. It's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, the movie's good too. The other book I want to mention, nonfiction, that was so good to me was The Dogs Who Found Me. It's by Ken Foster. It is about this man who sort of falls into pit bull rescue. But what was fascinating, it starts and the man adopts a pit bull, and it's like a week before 9/11, and he's in New York City. And so he actually goes down with his pit bull rescue to one of the firehouses before 9/11 happened. They were traveling, and his car got a flat tire or something, and so the fire department men, pushed his car in and helped him change his tire and all that stuff, and played with the pit bull. Then the week later that 9/11 happened. And so he's out one day and he sees that fire station and he sees the men that were lost.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
pretty heavy.
yeah. And he stops again and brings the pit bull, and the pit bull is able to, they pet the pit bull. They're great, he's comforting them. The
Yeah.
pit bull is, and that was so good. So he decides, I can't take this. I can't take living in New York City. I'm moving. He moved to New Orleans. Guess what the last chapter is about?
Katrina.
Katrina.
Goodness. Wow.
And so lots of his dog friends, people, they didn't want to leave because their dogs were there. And he is in, he does come in some from New Orleans um, to a friend's house, and he talks about them hunkering down with the dogs in the house and the sounds and what they hear and all that stuff. And so it was just fascinating because it was true story, but how do we deal with those things like that when we have a pet, and so that was a wonderful read to me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big thing. That's one of the questions I ask potential adopters is what is their emergency plan, not only for like tornadoes or hurricanes, that sort of thing, but also end of life issues.
Yes.
It's an important thing to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to have to check out some of these books.
They're so
Thank
good.
you.
Yes, I love books.
So, your idea about a book club. So, it's a pet-centric book club for Revelation Gardens. Tell us about that.
So what we're hoping, so we're doing these podcasts, and I'm going to try to tell some people I know to watch this, because we want this message to get out. We want people to be watching these podcasts to learn about Revelation Gardens and learn about what we're doing and help us and come to the shop and see what there is to buy. And so I love reading so much that I thought that would be kind of fun to have a book club podcast that's centered maybe at Revelation Gardens, and um, we could read and talk, and it just makes our place a little more visible in the community. One of our goals is about grieving and about stress relief, and you have the craft table here for stress relief, and I thought, well, books for a lot of us are stress relieving things, and this would be a neat way to have a stress relief thing. I started a book club at Camden Junior High when I moved there this year, and my teachers that join me there, they say every time we meet, they say, I really needed this. This really helps me give time for myself. So many women, especially men too, but I've seen lots more women in my profession, and we sometimes don't take care of ourselves because we're trying to take care of everybody else.
Right.
And so finding the time to read is one of those. Take care of yourself. Find the time. If you love to read, just make your time to read so that you have that relief. Here is a talker. He wants to be in the book club.
I think it's a great idea, and I've been in book clubs before, and sometimes it was hard to find the time, but when I actually gave that time to myself, I did a lot of audiobooks because when I was commuting at the time. But then we would get together and we'd have a lunch, and we kind of we'd share about the book, and it was just a time of fellowship, and it was really enjoyable. Now, I don't know if we'll actually do it in person or if we have people just comment, like we'll do a live and comment that way, or some of those things we'll have to probably figure out unless you know how
Well, that's what I'm trying to decide, and I thought maybe at the end of this, if you want to comment on the podcast at the bottom and tell us how you feel, if you would be interested in a book club and how it would be easiest for you to do. And like I said, I'm thinking about Lily and the Octopus for our first one because it's dealing with grief and your pet's tales. So you might look that book up and see if it's something you would like to read. And join me, and I'll read, and then I have somebody maybe talking with me, asking me questions, or we can, when they do Facebook Lives on Sunshine Boutique and stuff like that, they have somebody there saying, here's a question, and then we can talk out
certainly do that.
the question. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I love the idea, and thank you so much for sharing all these great books, and I learned a lot. just in the couple of titles that you mentioned, I learned a lot about what's out there, and I'm excited to check them out.
Right.
So
I
thank
would
you.
love for people to write down at the bottom which one sounded the most interesting, or if you've
Yeah.
read one and comment your thoughts on it. That would be cool, and so we could see that you've watched the show, and uh, it gives us some feedback. Thank you.
And we also do have the Find CAT. So he's somewhere in that you'll be able to see him.
Not
And
this
we have
CAT, but CAT, the black
yes, not this
toy.
CAT.
Yeah, the toy cat.
But we have some fun prizes and such if you comment that you found him and share. And we'll talk more about that each week when we start having people that are commenting and posting and sharing about finding him. We'll share what they found and that sort of thing. So thank you so much, Angie, and thank you for joining us today. That's our podcast for the week. And I'd like to extend a special thank you to our sponsors, the Camden Animal Clinic and Fox Sanitation. Through their generous support, we're able to bring you this podcast each week. And next week, we'll talk with Tabria Faulkner about how volunteers save lives. So remember, if you have a pet-related question, you can email us at revelation.gardens@gmail.com. And before we close out, I did want to say, you've mentioned several times about our goal is grief and stress reduction. And so we'll talk more about that in the future, but that is a big part of what we do. And so I want you to feel free to always come down. You can have a cup of tea, cup of coffee. You can sit on our couches, and you can read some of the books here and pet the kitties. So that's a great stress reliever. So until then, we have same cat time, same cat channel.
But dogs rule.
All right, thank you.